I'm Amanda Brown, and this is Behaviorism Through the Eyes of B.F. Skinner and Ivar Lovaas. B.F. Skinner was an influential psychologist in the neo-behaviorism school of thought. Neo-behaviorism is a branch of psychology that relies on research of observable behavior and internal states to develop theories and frameworks that explain behavior. Skinner was born and raised in Pennsylvania. As a child, he liked building gadgets and contraptions, and we'll see how that developed into some of his work as an adult. He had a passion for writing and wrote several books, and Skinner died of leukemia at 86 years old. During World War II, Skinner attempted to teach pigeons to guide bombs. The military eventually canceled his project, but instead he taught the pigeons how to play ping pong. And I wish we could solve wars by a friendly game of ping pong instead of bombings. Skinner believed that psychology should only be concerned about things we can see, such as behavior, rather than things we cannot see, such as consciousness. Skinner was very focused on reinforcement or the consequences of behavior. Consequences are what happens after a behavior is performed. In order to increase the behavior, the consequences should be reinforcement. And in order to decrease the behavior, the consequences should be punishment. And we'll see how these concepts tie into our next psychologist in a few minutes. Some call Skinner's type of thinking a bit radical or single focused. He's quoted as saying, behavior is shaped and maintained by its consequences. Skinner showed the effects of reinforcement and punishment with his famous experiment known as the Skinner box. So again, we have reinforcement or punishment following a behavior. With reinforcement, the rats are placed in the Skinner box, and when they press this little response lever, they are given food pellets. So the reinforcing behavior of receiving the food pellets causes the behavior of pressing the lever to be reinforced, and that behavior will increase in the future. And we compare this to the concept of punishment, where when the rats press the lever, so the same behavior of pressing the lever, instead of receiving food pellets like they would in reinforcement, they are actually given a little electric shock in the punishment model. So you can see that the floor inside the Skinner box that the rat is standing on has an electrified grid. So when they press the lever, they will receive a small electric shock. The idea of punishment is that instead of strengthening the behavior, it will weaken the behavior, causing the behavior to decrease. And I want you to remember the concept of the electric shock during punishment when we talk about our next psychologist. Ivar Lovaas drew on the work of B.F. Skinner and other behaviorists to pioneer applied behavior analysis, or ABA. ABA is a behavioral intervention to modify challenging behaviors, and it's primarily used in children with autism. ABA aims to reduce problem behaviors, teach new behaviors, and establish communicative language. Lovaas was born in Norway and immigrated to the US in 1950. In Norway, he had seen the German Nazi occupation, which made him wonder where this kind of destructive behavior came from or originated from within humans. And this question and experience were the key driving force of his interest in the study of psychology. He eventually founded the Autism Society of America, and he was often said to be charismatic, friendly, and brilliant. Like B.F. Skinner, Lovaas believed that consequences are the most important influences on behavior. And he's quoted as saying, when a child emerges as a human being, he does so essentially on the basis of the effect of his behaviors on his social environment. So the people within the child's social environment either reinforce or punish behavior. Those are the consequences, reinforcement or punishment, which informs the child of how they should behave, essentially shaping who they are as a person, according to Lovaas. Lovaas worked with many autistic children and had considerable success in changing behaviors that parents, teachers, and society deemed unacceptable. One of his studies claimed that the majority of the children who underwent his treatment had so much improvement that they could no longer even be diagnosed with autism. His work was reviewed and duplicated by other researchers, which gave it weight in the research and treatment community. His success led to ABA being widely adopted for use with autistic children. It's estimated that 64% of children with autism currently receive some form of ABA, and that number would probably be higher if there were more therapists trained in this treatment. While many people who have worked with Lovaas claim he was a caring and compassionate man who did everything he could to improve the lives of children with autism, he has come under fire for some of the early practices of ABA. And this criticism primarily comes from adults in the autism community, so adults who are autistic, or the parents of autistic children who have seen their children go through ABA therapy. Some even claim that the tenets of ABA or the practices in ABA actually go against the foundational concepts that Skinner taught, even though they claim to come directly from Skinner himself. In 1965, Life magazine published an article describing some of the punishment techniques that Lovaas used with autistic children in his ABA research. As we saw with Skinner, who used the rats in the Skinner box, one punishment Lovaas used was to place the children on a floor that was able to give them a small electric shock when they weren't following instructions. Some advocates in the autism community claim that this is child abuse. It is rarely still used today, except for in situations where the child is at serious risk of harming themselves through self-injurious behavior, such as banging their head against a wall or floor. So these are images from the Life article. And on the left-hand side, we see Skinner and an autistic girl. And you can see that the floor that in the room that she's standing on, it's equipped with the electric current so that when she is not following instructions, she receives an electric shock. And on the picture on the right, we see Dr. Lovaas and the autistic child. And this is the moment when Dr. Lovaas administers the electric shock, and you can see the autistic girl's response. There's more criticism toward Dr. Lovaas. In the 1970s, he worked on a study that used ABA principles to encourage feminine male children, so male children who have feminine traits, to modify their behavior with the goal of keeping them from becoming transsexuals in adulthood, as he claimed. This study bolstered the use of conversion therapy in the gay population. And conversion therapy is a highly dangerous and problematic practice that is now banned in many US states. So ABA, as it's evolved today, this is a quote from researchers who have put forth the idea that the primary focus at the center of ABA therapy should be compassion. And this is a quote. Applied behavior analysis is rooted in the conviction that behavior change lead to improved quality of life. The goal of ABA has always been to help our consumers achieve outcomes and milestones that are important to them and improve their lives in the ways that they choose. For more than half a century, this approach has proven successful, but we are now hearing increasing concerns about problematic application of behavioral principles, suggesting that as our field has grown, we may have lost sight of client-centered interventions and outcomes. Adding compassion as a definitional dimension of ABA will help behavior analysts find their way back to implementing interventions in a responsive, collaborative, and humble manner that includes working with our consumers and our critics and listening to perspectives that can help us improve our practice. Here are my references. There's quite a few. That's it. Thank you so much. And are there any questions?